So good afternoon, sir. Please allow me to say a few words in your honor. Thank you. Khenpo Sonam Tsewang graduated at the Central Institute of Higher Tibetan Studies in Varanasi and also studied in Namdroling Monastery at the Ngagyur Nyingma Institute, where he was enthroned as Khenpo in 2011. He has translated the pervading melodious sound of thunder, the outer liberation story of Terton Migyur Dorje, together with Judith Amtzis, and is currently working on a translation of Longchenpa's treasuries of Pith instructions. He travels extensively with H.E.Khenchen Pema Sherab Rinpoche, serving as his translator. He also teaches Buddhist philosophy and practices to students around the world. Sir, on behalf of my principal and all the teachers, I welcome you today for this wonderful, wonderful webinar. And we are very thankful that you have found time for us on this day. Along with this, sir, with your permission, we would like to observe a minute's silence for Ila ma'am's husband, who unfortunately is not with us today. Thank you. May I request all the teachers to kindly have a 1 minute silence, please. Thank you, teachers. We hope and we pray that may his soul rest in peace, and may God give you the courage and strength to the void he has created. You can just space it out. Thank you. And sir, now with your kind permission, shall we start? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, everybody. First of all, I would like to thank Deepa as well as faculty of the school as well as the teachers to provide me the opportunity to share my thoughts on particularly on today's topic on how to develop compassion and resilience during these COVID times, the pressing times. And I will be speaking from the being kind of born in the, not only just born, but also having studied and practiced Buddhism for some time. I would like to share the Buddhist perspective of looking at whatever is going around in our lives. Buddhist perspective on an individual, people around us, the world that we live in, because it's very important, first of all, to really develop that kind of the right kind of view, because what happens is all the problems that we face in life, if we really look into it carefully, why the problem arises is because there is a huge gap between what is the reality and what is our perception. So just to give an example, I will give a very simple example, like relationship, for example. Relationship is a big issue, actually, in everybody's life, actually. Relationship with people, relationship with, from the teacher's perspective, relationship with students, teachers among themselves at the workplace, and so forth. So what happens is when we set out in our lives, we always have this perception that things will remain, and it will, like suppose a very good relationship with a particular person, then we think that, okay, this relationship will last long because like we are on the like, right now everything is going well, and our expectation is that this will last long and this will last forever, right? However, the reality is not that. The reality is that just as everything, relationship is also kind of changes, you know, from good to bad to worse, from bad to worse, and from worse to bad to good, you know, it's everything is like that, you know, from both sides, from positive to negative, negative to positive. However, when we don't have that understanding, the realization that reality is like that this will not last, whether it's good or bad. So what happens is, because there is a strong attachment that this will last, when that particular relation doesn't last, you know, suddenly changes, then we are shocked. Why we are shocked? It's very important to look within why we are shocked. If we have a little bit of understanding that this will not last, you know, at the back of our mind, okay, you know, even I'm really kind of enjoying this, having a very good time in this relationship, but just as everything, it will also go through changes. At the back of our mind, if I'm prepared, then if suddenly something happened, then, you know, we are ready for that. We won't have a breakdown. We will not be shattered, because we are centered, because we know that, okay, this is the reality, this is what is going through now. And then we have an understanding that, you know, just like everything else, this too will change, this too shall pass. So that's one practical example, like in our day-to-day life. So what happens is, when we have that understanding of both, you know, from good to bad to worse, and from worse and bad to good, you know, both sides happen. And when we have that space within ourselves to accept that, then we won't be shattered when things go wrong, when things fall apart. And therefore, we'll be in a position to deal with that situation, because we are at that time, we are sane. We have not lost our sanity, because we are actually seeing what is the reality. There is not much gap between what is the reality and what is the perception. So the stability is there. When that stability is there, then we can function as an individual in our own capacities, whatever role that we have in society, whether it's a teacher, whether it's an administrator, whatever job that we may be in. So to sum up, just like everything else, like relationship, status, position, everything, wealth, whatever it is there that surrounds us, goes through change, you know. So too, this COVID situation. Because COVID also is a conditioned thing. It won't last forever. If you look at, you know, the beginning of when we went through the COVID, then there was a paranoia, panic, you know, that, you know, everything will fall apart and things like that. And because, you know, as human beings, we don't really know about what is the character of that virus, you know, very less knowledge about it. Now, kind of like we are in this stage that we know a little bit about, we know quite a lot about it, right? That, okay, you know, vaccines are also there. You know, we know how to deal when a person gets infected. You know, if the person comes to a stage where one is become breathless, then we go to the hospital and get support, isn't it? So you see, like from the beginning of the COVID until now, a lot has changed, and changed for the better also, right? So if you look at those things, then we will come to know that it was not the initial paranoia, this great fear that we had was kind of like actually uncalled for. Of course, you know, a reasonable amount of fear is okay, because that help us to take all the precautions, you know, otherwise we'll be careless. So we know that if we are careful, we can avoid getting infected. And these are the things that we need to go through. The change, like for example, just now we were talking about like shifting from offline to online. It's a very like painful kind of thing for all, you know, it's such a hassle. But then if you look at the brighter side of it, at least as humans, we can still communicate. We can still kind of interact with it. There is some kind of platform there, a platform which can help us, you know. It can't be like 100% like offline, but at least there's some kind of platform to continue like teaching or interaction, communication, business, whatever it may be like, you know. So when we have the bigger picture of it, then it brings us what we call strength, mental strength, because because we have perspective, we have the right perspective to see that, okay, this is the case, this is the reality, you know. So when we talk about Buddhism, you know, the first and only one thing that Shakyamuni Buddha, when he got enlightened, the first word that he spoke is, life is dukkha. Now, this is like, may seem like very pessimistic, you know. Life is characterized by dukkha. Dukkha is suffering, right? And dukkha actually is what we call, in the correct translation of dukkha is like dissatisfaction. And dissatisfaction is like, no matter what we do in life, like initially there's a lot of excitement, and when we go forward, and finally when we actually reach that place, and that initial expectation that, oh, this will be so wonderful, that's not there, you know. And then again we chase another kind of dream. So that shows that there is actually a wrong perception that's going on in our mind, that we always think that grass is always greener on the other side of the fence. And when we go there, actually, there's nothing there. So then, like, the question would be like, does it mean that we have to leave aside, like, you know, all the chasing of dreams and so forth? No, definitely not. We have to chase of dreams, but we should be prepared that in that journey, these are possibilities. These are all the possibilities, so that, you know, we have that spaciousness. We will develop that resilience, whatever, you know, that, you know, when the journey unfolds, you know, then we will go through that, and we will kind of like, we will enjoy each and every stages of the journey. And there won't be like unrealistic expectation that actually when we go there and you don't feel that we don't kind of experience what was expected. So therefore, it's very important to develop that understanding of what is actually that what we want to achieve and how far we can expect, how far we can expect and how far we have to be realistic in terms of our pursuit of whatever we are doing. So therefore, the first step actually is what we call embracing change, embracing impermanence. COVID actually is a new reality that the change of the reality that happened, and we had to kind of like go through that. There was no choice. But if you resent that change, mentally, if you resent that change and you really don't want to accept that, then it's like creating one's own kind of pain, within. We accept that things gonna change. The COVID is, no matter how negative, no matter how difficult it might be, it also is conditioned. It can also change. We can see like how far it has changed from the beginning of the COVID and now, after 2-3 years. So accepting and embracing change leads to, what it leads to is spaciousness. Okay, so this is the situation. Okay, then what we can do in this situation, without losing our hope, like what we can do to make use of this adversity. So the online platform, for example, just to share one personal experience, is like before the COVID happened, personally for me also, like I couldn't reach that many people. Physically I can go to, like my teacher and I go and go to different places in different countries to teach, but we can reach only a limited number. But online is like in the comfort of your home, then you can reach thousands. You can share whatever knowledge that one has. And that is the positive side of it. Of course, it has its limitation. You don't have the human experience of it, the human social kind of aspect to it, the being, meeting personally, physically is totally different experience, isn't it? But despite that, we still kind of like are able to use this platform to kind of like for a better future, like to like, for example, from the teacher's perspective, to educate the children continuously, without kind of like stopping it altogether. So when we accept change, when we embrace change, then that leads to spaciousness. When there is space within, then we are what we call, we are centered, we are integrated. We don't disintegrate, we don't lose control of ourselves, our minds, our kind of like sanity, and therefore what happens is it helps us be prepared and face whatever situation there is in front of us without losing our sanity, without losing our clarity of mind and thought. Now, if you go kind of like, if you don't accept change, if you don't embrace change, if you always resent from the mind, means like, it's like hitting your head against the wall, because reality will never change. Reality is reality, nobody can change. reality is something that is what it is, nobody can change. So like the choice before us is to resent the change or accept the change. Now, if you resent the change, then no acceptance, resentment, narrow-mindedness, then that leads to depression, that leads to tension, that leads to stress, that leads to all kinds of problems. Now we accept change and move on. Okay, it's a very bad situation. It's something unbearable, but we still have to move on. Okay, this is the change that we need to accept. Okay, so what we can do in this situation. The moment you think in that way, opportunities, there are a lot of opportunities, a lot of possibilities arise. So Buddha actually taught us why he said that Dharma is your refuge. Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, he talked about refuge. Refuge means protection, right? Protection. Now, what kind of protection is it? When we accept reality, when we have the courage, when we have the space to accept reality, that protects us. Protect us from what? Protect us from losing control of ourselves. Protect us from depression. Protect us from all kinds of issues, problems, which are mostly kind of psychological aspect. So the moment you accept change, then spaciousness, integration, clarity, then no matter what kind of adversity comes before you, can move forward. We can move forward. So in this way, we are protected. Therefore, we take refuge in the Dharma. Therefore, we take refuge in the Dharma, right? And that kind of protection cannot be given by the government. Nobody can give that kind of protection. The insurance companies won't give you that. You won't be covered. And therefore, we have a huge resource. We have this mind which can actually, which has a huge potential to move forward, to do productive things, provided we have the right perspective, provided we have the courage, we have the space to accept reality, what it is, for what it is. So therefore, embracing change. I think in this regard, I will maybe tell you a story, that happened during the Buddha's time. There was this lady called Krishna Gautami, and she had a baby. She had a son, and it's very dear to her. Maybe after many years, she kind of like she had a baby, a lot of effort. And so dear, so, like even more precious than one's own life. Then one day what happened is her son got sick, some sickness, and the son died. Then the world actually collapsed in her eyes, in her perception. She was shattered. It was unbearable thing. And she couldn't really accept that her son died. And she ran around carrying her baby in her arms and asking all the, whoever is powerful, whoever knows about medicine, whoever can heal. She kind of consulted each and every saint each and every sage, each and every doctor. Unfortunately, nobody could help her. Then somebody said, like, maybe Buddha is around, Shakyamuni Buddha is around. Maybe he might help you, he might heal you, or he might heal your son back to life. And then she was so happy and she was full of hope, and she went to Buddha, see Buddha. And she asked the Buddha, please bring back my son to life, make him alive. Because she was not in a position to accept that her son died. Now you see, like, why in that situation, why the mind is not kind of in a position to accept that, that you can't revive, you can't reverse things that have changed, is because there's so much strong attachment, grasping, and that's perception. Okay, my baby boy, he will be alive, he'll be alive, he'll be alive, he'll be good, he will be good. And that kind of very strong attachment, strong grasping, and every one of us have. Then Buddha said, like, okay, I will give you a solution. I will bring back your son to life, provided there's terms and condition. The terms and condition is you bring a handful of sesame seeds or mustard seed, handful, and that mustard seed, you collect mustard seed from each and every household where death has not happened. And she was so happy. Okay, after all, I'm getting some kind of solution to my problem. And with great hope, she went from household to household. And she asked, please give me a seed, mustard seed, if that has not happened in your family. And somebody said, my father died. Somebody said, my grandmother died. Somebody said, my daughter died, husband died, wife died, and so forth. She went to all the household in the surrounding area, the village, and she couldn't find one family where that has not happened. When she found out that, each step towards each household, it's like, the realization slowly dawning in her that, the truth, the truth is that death is imminent. Death is kind of something that is, inevitable. It's something that everyone goes through. It's a part of life. Each step to each household leads to the realization, her realization. And finally, when she couldn't find, then she had to accept, there was no choice. And it was for her own benefit that, okay, accepting this and moving forward is the only way. And finally, she got peace, that is not something that happened to me and my children, but it is something that happens to everybody. So you see there is a gap, like a huge gap. It's a huge gap. It's not like a small gap. It's a huge gap between what is reality and what is our perception. The wider the gap, the bigger the problem. Wider the gap, the more intense the pain will be. When you are able to bridge that gap, the closer you are to reality, more peace. You will experience more peace. So COVID is also part of our life. It's also a conditioned thing. You know, in the past, historically, we say like Spanish flu happened. And if we really think carefully, this is not something that is this is not something what we call, even though we said unprecedented, it's not unprecedented. It has happened in the past. Pandemics have happened in the past. The way we deal with pandemic might be different now, but it happened in the past. So mentally, if you think like, okay, this is not something that is something impossible. It is not something impossible that has happened, right? So, I mean, let's think within. The moment we think that this is not something impossible that has happened, it has happened in the past and it is happening now. And when we accept that, when we are ready to accept that, it gives us space. It provides us space, openness, strength, mental strength. Because we are ready, now we are ready to face the truth. When we are ready to face the truth, there is no fear. When there is no fear, then we can function as an individual. There will be mental clarity. And then, of course, we were talking about one of the aspects is compassion. When we are able to see reality, and when we know that when we are not ready to accept the reality, how much pain it causes in us, and we can relate that when others go through pain, we can relate to that, and automatically compassion arises. We can understand, but we will try our best to help others see the truth. By seeing the truth, but seeing the reality, by accepting the reality, is the only solution to move forward. Nothing can really, substitute it. We might cover up, but reality strikes. We say reality strikes. When reality strikes, why it strikes? Because it is the reality, it happens every time. Why it strikes us? Because we are not ready for it. That's why it strikes us. That's why we have to go through the pain. So I think it's quite obvious, like the moment we understand that all conditioned things, whether it's one's health, one's body, one's health, relationship with your parents, children, and students, co-workers, colleagues, everything is subject to change. At the back of your mind, there's this kind of huge, kind of like a ground, a very stable ground that actually looks at like, okay, what's happening around, like, so much change that is happening. The waves, like the ocean, waves of the ocean, like up and down and up and down. The moment you see that, you can just be a spectator. You can just look at like how diverse, how beautiful the play is. We will not be, the moment we are able to see that, we won't be kind of like, we won't be crushed. We won't be shattered. We will be able to ride the waves. Ride the waves of life. In front of us, everything is happening. In us, how our emotions also go through change, how our psychological states also go through change, how our physical body goes through changes. All the rivers, you say like the 4 rivers are constantly flowing, constantly flowing. You can't change that. You can't stop that. Nothing can stop it. At the moment we know that, okay, this is the reality. And when the moment you accept, then there is only peace and peace and peace. nothing more than that. So I think it's so important. The key point is how to bridge the gap between this reality and our perception. And I think if we work on this, if we educate ourselves on this as teachers, it will be really helpful to also teach the children this, because this is the sure way to happiness, And unfortunately, this aspect of education, really important aspect of education, does not happen in classrooms. The modern education system, of course, it has its strengths, but the weakness is that it really doesn't prepare us to face the reality. It leads us to somewhere, like it's like chasing somewhere. And this inner science of Buddhism, which actually is born from India, it's from India, isn't it? This culture and this rich knowledge, this wisdom, ancient wisdom, is from India. This actually helps us to look within, not outside. Look within, that to see that there's a gap that needs to be filled. And as long as education doesn't help to bridge that gap, there will always be lacking. There will always be lacking. And no matter how much developed advanced technology this, that, we may walk on the moon, we may find that life is possible in Mars, or whatever it may be, still, this gap that I told will never be bridged. And as long as the bridge is, this gap is not bridged, there will always be pain. There will always be chaos. There will always be trouble. So I think, like, on this note, maybe I should conclude. What do you think? Because it's already 1 hour, right? Do you still have time?
Yes.
Or maybe open the floor and have some question and answers.
Sure. That will be fantastic. Samya Rauji, please moderate question answers.
Yes, ma'am. I would request the teachers to unmute themselves, and if you have any questions, you can ask.
Soumya, I just want to ask this example that Sir has given us of Kissa Gautami. There is a lesson in class 10 which we have just taught, the same lesson just last week to our class 10 children. So one concept that I found difficult to introduce to them was that, she was being selfish if she was sad or missing her own son, the death of a loved one. So they did not know why should that be called selfishness. So how do I introduce this to this concept of yours? For a child to understand, it is difficult. As adults, I think as we grow, we get to know, and we've seen deaths by close and all. But for children, it was very difficult to understand.
Yeah.
That, why can't the mother cry for her own son, and why can't she grieve? Yes.
Yeah, that's actually a very practical question, and it's also very important. The thing is, what I personally feel is to introduce these concepts to the child, maybe the story won't work, because the thing is the child has yet to develop concepts. So I think we might need to design a child-appropriate teaching style, where child can relate to. Why I'm saying this is because, you know, it is said, like psychologists say, that until the child reaches age of 7, you know, concepts doesn't work. So therefore, even asking them to learn how to read and write, for particularly writing, you know, and also the sounds of the alphabets, that doesn't make any sense to them. What they can learn is what they see around them, colors, shapes. The senses needs to be kind of used. The concept of death and all this, you know, it can't be directly taught. It has to be kind of taught through examples, taught through some daily things, like, you know, like change, where the child needs to slowly let them understand, like, how change is something that constantly happens in our life. If that is introduced, then slowly one can move on to the bigger aspects of change, like death and so forth. Now, I don't know, like, you know, whether it's really mentioned selfish. I don't think it's really meant. Maybe I have to see what is written in
so there is the word selfishness, and it's in the part of the questions as well. So
okay.
That is the only question that I was difficult.
Yeah, I think I have to look at it. Maybe you can share me that document. Now, what I'm trying to say is, like, when I say acceptance of reality, I don't mean to say that, okay, you shouldn't cry or you shouldn't grieve or sad or things like that. But you see, like, you can grieve, you can be sad, but don't become dysfunctional, you know, but don't become overwhelmed that you don't function, you can't function. You lose your clarity of thought. What is before you? Now, Krishna Gautami was in a state that she can't function. And why that first happened in the first place is basically because acceptance of reality. There was difficulty in acceptance of reality, you know, that this is the universal truth that one needs to accept and move forward. That was not, you know, she was not ready for that. Why she was not ready for that is because there was this, I was talking about the gap. There was a huge gap. It's not like a small gap, a huge gap. I mean, it's like, I can't accept, you know, that, like, this is the situation that we have, that happens. Suppose, I will give you a very practical example. Suppose you lose your job. So teachers, when all of a sudden you lose your job, and how far you can accept that? You know, all of a sudden, and you really don't understand, like, that this kind of thing can happen to you, but it can happen. It's not an impossible thing, right? And at that moment, you don't one doesn't have the space that this is not an impossible thing. This is something that is possible, right? Okay, now if you really are ready that, okay, you know, this is possible. This is not impossible. Now what? Okay, let me try to see what is the cause of it. Then you have this clarity to deal with the situation, you know, that you are not kind of shattered at all. You are not shattered to such an extent that you become dysfunctional. So that's what I'm trying to kind of get across, you know, the message.
Thank you.
So yeah.
So may I ask a question to you?
Sure, please.
Thank you. So my question to you is very student or children specific.
Yeah.
These days, what we see that there is a rat race among we can also say among the parents, not only the children, that everyone wants their children to do everything. And in that, when we say there is a contradiction amongst the children who are continuously growing. So one school says that I want to conquer my dreams, I want to live my childhood. And the other school says, no, we must progress as fast as we can because time is what we have as our counterpart. So just want to know from you that as teachers, or as we're all our parents as well, so what we can sit with our children one-on-one and tell them so that they feel calm, they make friends with themselves, and they feel calm that yes, everything will happen in its own time. We don't have to rush. That's my question.
I think this is a very big question, actually. This is a huge problem in today's society. Yeah. So, as I was telling about the materialistic outlook of life, that's the culprit. The main culprit is materialistic outlook of life. That happiness is something that if you gain something, if you acquire something, if you gather something, if you have more, then you'll be happier. So that's the main key problem. That's why in Tibetan we say Nangpa. For Buddhists we say Nangpa. Nangpa means those who look within, those who seek happiness within. So that's the key difference in the education approach, you know. So modern education approach is more materialistic, particularly the mainstream. Mainstream is very materialistic. I mean, no, because I'm also educated in that stream. I don't say that this is kind of totally kind of negative or so. But, you know, this basic outlook to begin with, the education process, that's where the flaw actually lies.
Right.
And therefore, having more and happiness doesn't have a cause and effect relationship. You know, cause and effect. Okay, if you have more, then you'll be more happy. That logic actually is not actually logical in the sense. It's not rational.
Right.
It doesn't mean that, okay, you have to kind of throw away looking for things. Of course, you need basic things. You have to eat, you have to have a cloth, you have to have a roof over your head, but not more than that. You know, you can't really kind of, by extending your desires, by multiplying your desires, you won't be happy. And that's the key educational approach. And particularly with children, we have to be very careful at a very young age that nurturing is so important. What needs to be nurtured? I think from the world of education perspective, Steiner education perspective, the development of the head, development of the heart, and development of the hand. These three should go together. And particularly age-appropriate education should be given. It's more like the children are given so much that they can't really deal with, because they are, I mean, psychologically, they have their own kind of process of kind of physical kind of, changes that happens, hormonal changes that happens, mental changes that happen, psychological changes that happen. Based on that age-appropriate level, we have to teach. Otherwise, it's kind of killing their innocence, that innocence, that purity, we
Right.
kill that purity. So I think for the educators of children, I think a basic shift of perspective is needed.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Any other teacher would like to ask?
Good afternoon, sir. I
Good
just wanted
afternoon.
to thank you to make all of us realize that we have to prepare our children to face the realities. But given the situation, we should not be dysfunctional, and we should look within us to lead a happy life. In a nutshell, I just wanted to thank you for making us realize that we have to pass on to our generations. So that is why we are here, sir. Thank you.
Yeah,
I would now, yes, sir.
Yeah, I think it's very important. I think this is very important. I think, and in order to educate the children, the teachers actually must have this knowledge. And not just knowledge, it's not like, it's not just an intellectual level, heart level, emotional level, The combination of head and heart is so important that without that, then we are not whole. Some thinking is necessary, but at the same time, feeling it, experiencing it, so important. That actually makes our life more joyful because we are not machines. We kind of put so much of information in our heads. If we can't feel anything, then that knowledge is just kind of a dry knowledge. It doesn't have that essence, isn't it? So that's very important.
Can I please add something? Rinpoche, I'm very grateful for this call which you've done with us. The teachers here are very unique. And when I was there collecting data, I have seen, there would be sometimes a child's father would have been martyred on the fronts, would have, succumbed to battle. And I've seen these teachers being very loving, very caring. Even the way they tell the child that, there has been a bereavement has been very unique. And as a team, I have seen these mothers over here, many of them having lost their husband, brother, many times even their own child in the battlefield. And they have this intense compassion. And the way they communicate is something fantastic. In fact, this is a historic day for us at Army School. The first time, we've had a Tibetan master teaching us more about reality, more about compassion. And I'm very, very grateful, Rinpoche. I just reached out to you and you immediately agreed. So thank you so much.
I'm really happy that, you actually kind of, as I told earlier, that you acted as a bridge between the two worlds. And I mean, like most of the time, now that I'm in Europe, but most of the time I was in India. So I also make kind of make sure that I meet with my Indian brothers and sisters always and share, because I mean, we have a lot of, we have very strong connection historically, and also now, and in terms of like, most of the Tibetan refugees being in India, and even His Holiness Dalai Lama always saying he's the longest serving guest of India, and he's like son of India, and whatever knowledge that he's got is from India. Now that he's kind of eaten rice and dal for so many years, now his body is also in Indian. So I think same applies to every Tibetan, living in India. So whatever little bit of knowledge that we have, I think we'll be kind of happy. It's our responsibility to share with our Indian brothers and sisters, and to be able to have the provide them the access to these rich ancient Indian wisdom, which actually kind of in a way in the mainstream, it's like sidelines, it's not that important. Maybe if you get time, you study it, but it's the basic necessity, as I was speaking earlier about the basic shift, the basic kind of like perspective, the aim and objective of education is not to kind of acquire more material things. The basic kind of fundamental aim of education is to fully develop the individual, particularly the inner aspect of that individual, which really prepares the individual to have compassion, have resilience in the times of difficulties, and remain strong, remain centered, remain sane, and kind, compassionate. All these kind of like the mainstream education is difficult for it to actually cater to this particular need. So I, with my very short time, even if I kind of even if I say a little bit about reality and things like, embracing truth, even if it helps to make the teachers here to think about it, contemplate on it, reflect on it, and I would consider this as a success. For me, it would be success.
Thank you very much, Rinpoche, for your kind words and enlightening us. I would now request one of our colleagues, Mrs. Kanagi Tripathi, to present vote of thanks. Thank you very much. You have a wonderful day ahead.
Welcome.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir. Tashi Dele, everyone. I, Mrs. Kanagi Tripathi, on behalf of Army Public School Kamraj and entire fraternity of the school, extend my most sincere thanks to our distinguished speaker, Khenpo Sonam Tsewang, for making this webinar a very meaningful and interesting. Thank you very much, sir, for sharing with us Buddhist perspective and finding this present time. We will definitely try to follow your suggestions, although it's little difficult to leave all desires, but we will definitely try to follow the path of truth, which is there in Buddhism. I would like to express our deep gratitude to the principal, Mrs. Sajita ma'am, for her presence in the webinar. I would also thank Deepa ma'am for her guidance and support to make this webinar successful. Once again, thank you everyone. Tuji Jai Khaleshu. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you.
Please convey my
Okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.